Look at those 7 principles of culturally responsive teaching. The first one is students are honored in their cultural connections. This is key in today's diverse environments. The colloquial phrase that I like to use, and I'm going to give you a colloquial phrase, sort of a way that I interpret each of these principles. The colloquial phrase for principle 1 is, kids get it that we get them. Kids get it that we get them. The key is whether the kids understand that we have some notion of who they are. And this means who they are in their gender, in their age group, in their ability, in their learning style, in their religion, their culture, their background, their immigrant status, their sexual orientation. It means who kids are. It doesn't necessarily mean what we normally think of as multicultural education. That's a key part of principle 1, is including content, including examples, stories, people that relate to the different cultures of kids in your classroom, as well as other cultures. So part of it is that content inclusion piece. But the more important one in my mind is that the student understands that the teacher, if I'm teaching a student, that Mr. Howard has some sense of who this student is. An example of this would be a Latino gay student from Denver that I met at a national conference who was giving a presentation with some other students. And he said, I have 3 types of teachers when I go into my 11th grade classroom. He was a junior in high school. And he said, as a gay student, and he's a very out gay student. He's not in the closet. He's very present with his gayness in his life and his presentation of himself. He says, I come into some classrooms and I can tell teachers are afraid of me, they don't like me, and they wish I wasn't there. He says, I get that. On the other hand, I go into some other teacher's classroom and they're working very hard at acting as if they get me, understand me, like me, but I also get it that they're not really comfortable with that. And the third type of teacher, this is I think what we're talking about here, he says, I go into their classroom and it's not an issue. I'm just me. I get to be me. They're comfortable with me. It's not an issue. We can talk about sexual orientation, but they don't overdo it. They're not kind of coming on too strong in terms of how they understand me. They're just there. It's real. So that's one example of getting kids in terms of who they really are. In my wife's classroom, 2nd grade teaching, her mantra throughout her teaching career was to create culture-safe classroom for her students. So her students felt safe bringing their culture. She would do this through the lens of talking about cultures that weren't related to the kids in her classroom. So other cultures, different cultures. She did it through the food she ate, and the kids saw her eating her lunch. She did it through her clothing that she wore. So she presented herself as a person who likes culture, understands differences, and accepts them. So this is the first principle, that kids feel honored, recognized, and seen in their cultural connections.